Hello and welcome to another video. As usual, my name is Jeffrey and you're welcome to Inquisitive Universe. So with us today we have the Redmi 12C, which we've got in hand here, and we're going to put it through its paces. Now for those of us who are not in the know, or those of you who are interested in finding out about this phone, maybe you're interested in purchasing for yourself or for someone else, the Redmi 12C is one of the latest phones from Xiaomi Redmi, and we have it here. It's right here in Nigeria as well if you're interested, and the prices are already out. So let's look at the phone before we move further along into this video. The Redmi 12C is a budget phone. Some people may class it as a lower mid-range phone, but Xiaomi are advertising this one as a budget phone. Now for anybody who knows the way Xiaomi has worked for the longest, any Xiaomi phone, any Redmi phone with the C moniker attached is basically a budget phone. So for those of us who do not know, we have flagship, we have mid-range, we have budget, we have entry level. So flagship at the top, mid-range follows next, then you now have the budget, and then you now have the entry level, which slots at the very bottom. So in that order. So when you see here like stuff like when you hear budget, you should be able to know where this phone finds itself, where it's going to perform, how it's going to perform, etc. So let's move on. We have the phone here with us, and if you really want to know what this phone is all about, I advise you to stick with me to the end of this video. I'm going to tell you everything, pure undiluted truth about this phone. Leave all the advertising, all the marketing stuff you've heard. Let's get into the real stuff now. This phone is made of plastic, as to be expected from a budget phone. Plastic frame on which everything is attached to, and then it's covered by plastic back, and of course there is a fingerprint, rear fingerprint sensor at the back, very close to the cameras over there. And then at the bottom you find the speaker grill, and then a micro USB connector. I thought those were dead. They are not. Apparently they are still alive and well. At the top of the phone you find the selfie camera as well as the speaker grill, for making phone calls and all that. Phone is rounded, rounded, and it's plasticky. So let's move on from there. Let's talk about the display. The display on board here is 720p. Now remember, I said this phone is a budget phone. The 720p display is decent, not good, decent, right? If you're looking for something better, then you may want to get a phone like one of the Note phones with a 1080p display, but 720p is decent. If you are coming from a 720p and if you are coming from an AMOLED display, I would advise you to either lower your expectations or move on from this one. This one has a 720p LCD display. It's not necessarily the best, so at some viewing angles the color reproduction may be poor. Sometimes in bright light outside the display seems washed out basically, so you may have to temper your expectations when you come for this display. Overall I think the display gets a pass, especially when you are indoors. It gets a very good pass from me especially. And then let's move on. After the display, let's talk about the performance. Now, I know lots of stuff have been said about the Helio G85, but this is not necessarily. Some people really don't know how SoCs are classed. The G85 is a lower mid-range processor on a budget phone, so put that in mind. It's, if you check my list of top 100 smartphone processors, which I always advise people to check, you will see like this one is like really down. It's in the budget, it's in lower mid-range budget side of things, so which means that you get decent enough performance. On Antutu you're going to get around 230k 235k score of performance. I think on Geekbench you get around 1200 1300 score. So which means that this thing will play games, the average games that like people will play, to run apps okay. Anything that that is regular Android mainstream, it's going to do it. And in order to test its capability, I installed two emulators. One of them is DockStation, and the other one is the ATAS SX2, a PlayStation 2 emulator as well. I also installed VN Editor to see how well it it's going to edit, process videos and stuff, and it did just okay. It did take a little while to encode my videos, but it did fine. And then with the DockStation, it came out in flying colors, running PS1 games like there was no tomorrow. It was running them natively from the emulator. And then for the ATAS SX2, it did there was a little bit of stumbling, lagging. It struggled with some PlayStation 2 games, but overall it did just okay. So when it comes to performance, I think you are safe, you're covered. There's absolutely no problem with the performance on this one. This one, the performance is decent, it's good. Then you move on, let's move on and talk about the cameras. Now there's a 50MP Samsung JN1 on board with a 0.08 MP depth sensor. The depth sensor is really not needed, it's just for aesthetics, advertising purposes. The 50MP camera on board is actually quite okay. And I think Xiaomi have done very well with their software, because when you take this one out and you shoot in good lighting conditions, I'm saying it again, in good lighting conditions, you allow the phone to focus and then you shoot in the direction of the light. You allow the light to fall on the subject before you snap or before you take your shot. The pictures that come out are very useful, they are very good. And then if you want to make it better, if you can get Gcam, or if you can edit the results that come out of the default camera, great. It's absolutely great. It's not like it's not what you get on the level of Note phones or Note Pros or on flagships. Please do not go and make the mistake to compare this one to much more expensive phones. No, compare within the same category. This phone is decent, and it does take, in good lighting, it does take very decent pictures and very decent video. There is no optical image stabilization on this one, so you need steady hands when you're recording video. And then also in low light, it's not going to be all that decent in low light, except you understand what I'm trying to say. It's a budget phone, so that's very important to note. I think finally we have the battery. There's a huge 5000 milliampere battery here, and it does last. The battery does last, but the problem is it does not support fast charge of any sort. There's only 10 watts here, 10 watts of normal charge, which means that this phone is going to take a while to charge. 2 hours, as at when I tested it, 2 hours to charge up. And yeah, that's mostly it. There's Bluetooth 5.1, Wi-Fi 5, there's 4G, LTE, category 7. What else is there? It supports OTG. There's a 3.5mm jack. There's GPS here. There's an accelerometer. There's a proximity sensor. There's a light sensor, and of course there's USB 2.0. For prices, you can get this one, the 3GB variant, 364, for 75,500, and then the 4 plus 128GB RAM variant for 85,800. All prices courtesy of Raya and Pointech. So with that, we've come to the end of this review. Please take note, this device is a budget phone, so please adjust your expectations, right? I guess I'll catch you in the next one. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and keep me going, and I'll keep coming back for you guys. Ciao.